When we hear the word modernity, we're talking big ideas like human equality, individual agency, and social revolution. We almost instinctively give all the credit to the West. We think of the Enlightenment, the French Revolution, the Industrial Age, right? But leaning on that assumption actually misses a massive piece of the historical puzzle. So is modernity strictly a Western invention? Actually, no, absolutely not. Today, we're going to unpack how Korea developed its very own autogenous or homegrown modernity. This was a massive philosophical earthquake, and it happened completely independently of Western influence.
Welcome to this explainer. We are diving into two incredibly complex, highly influential philosophical frameworks that totally redefined human subjectivity in Korea: Donghak thought and Daesun thought. Now, these aren't just obscure historical footnotes. They are literally revolutionary ways of looking at the relationship between humans, the universe, and the divine.
Here is our roadmap for today. We'll start by defining autogenous modernity, then explore Donghak's radical idea that people are heaven, followed by Daesun's focus on harmony with gods. After that, we'll put them head-to-head in an ideological showdown, and finally look at the era of human agency.
All right, kicking things off with Section 1, Defining Autonomous Modernity, a homegrown shift.
The term we are anchoring on today is autogenous modernity. Now, autogenous simply means self-generated or homegrown. This was a uniquely Korean philosophical development that totally reconstructed the human worldview and our subjective place in the universe. We have to understand, this wasn't some imported idea just pasted over a traditional society. It was a powerful, internal shift within Korea that sought to elevate the status of humanity from the inside out. It offered a completely distinct path to modern thinking, one that didn't rely at all on Western-centric models.
Moving right into Section 2, Donghak thought, the radical transformer.
So here is the absolute core of Donghak philosophy, Inachon, which translates to people are the sky, or heaven. Think about the historical shock value of this concept for a second. You really have to put yourself in the shoes of someone living in that pre-modern society. Back then, only the ruling emperor, literally the son of heaven, could claim any sort of direct equivalence to the divine. To suddenly stand up and declare that everyone is heaven, that was a massive, unprecedented philosophical disruption.
And this led to a deeply unconventional idea of equality. Donghak argued that the butcher down at the market, the women in the household, and even young children were all literally equal to heaven. This radically maximized the immanent aspect of human relationships. It completely flipped the script. It wasn't about sitting around waiting for some transcendent God to hand down value. It was about finding absolute divine value right here on Earth, inside every single person. It pursued this transformative modernity that directly paralleled Western concepts of human equality, sure, but it arrived at that conclusion through its own distinct Eastern philosophical route.
But Donghak didn't just stop at social equality. It totally empowered the individual mind. They introduced this brilliant concept called bulyeongyeon. Basically, this means that things that seem totally incomprehensible to us right now, the bulyeon, can actually be understood one day, the gyeon, through continuous human practice and cultivation. So you weren't just passively receiving divine wisdom anymore. Through hard work and practice, you could actively comprehend the universe. It presented the very real, tangible possibility of enlightenment through human understanding.
Okay, let's pivot to Section 3, Daesun thought, the harmonious coexister.
Now, Daesun thought centers on something slightly different: God-human harmony. In fact, it actively criticized Donghak's Inachon concept. Daesun argued, hey, humans can't just declare themselves equal to heaven. They saw that as a huge potential trap for human arrogance, a really dangerous mindset where we might easily forget the profound grace and providence of heaven and earth. So instead of trying to replace God with humans, Daesun emphasized building a deeply respectful, symbiotic relationship between the two.
Unlike Donghak, Daesun relies on a very clear three-world structural framework. You have heaven, which handles celestial civilization planning, the human world, which is the subject of earthly sacraments, and the land, which they view as the origin of scientific civilization. Now, these three distinct worlds aren't just sitting in isolation, they continuously interact. The whole thing is operated by divine command, or Shinmyeong. Shinmyeong are essentially these supreme beings of truth who manage the operation of heaven and earth. So in this view, humanity is just one part of a massive, interactive cosmic machine.
Because of this vast interconnected structure, Daesun proposes a much more gradual, coexistence-oriented change. It definitely doesn't want an immediate, destructive revolution. Instead, it focuses on Haewon, which is the active resolution of deep-seated grudges and grievances, and Buhun, which is the act of repaying gratitude to the kindness of heaven and earth. In this specific framework, human status doesn't rise by abruptly overthrowing the entire system, it rises gradually. It happens through healing, profound respect, and finding harmony with the divine.
So how do these stack up against each other? Section 4. The ideological showdown, contrasting the philosophies.
When you put them side by side, the differences between these two philosophies are actually pretty wild. Donghak says people are heaven. Daesun demands harmony with gods. When we look at equality, Donghak is calling for an immediate, sweeping revolution, whereas Daesun focuses on a gradual coexistence achieved by resolving past grievances. And in their cosmology, Donghak is fiercely human-centered, lacking that rigid concept of the three worlds. Daesun, on the other hand, relies entirely on that clear structure and its interaction with divine beings. It is literally a face-off between radical, transformative revitalization and evolutionary cosmic interaction.
Which brings us to our final stop, Section 5, the era of human agency, Sung Sa-jae-en.
This right here is a truly groundbreaking, epical shift. The old proverb used to dictate that, sure, humans could plan things out, but ultimate success, that was entirely in the hands of heaven. Well, Daesun thought flipped this completely on its head with the concept of Sung Sa-jae-en, meaning success now depends on humans. Following what they view as the incarnation of the Guchon Sengje, the highest deity, into the human realm, the entire dynamic shifted. Heaven still plans the blueprint, but the actual execution, the true realization of success on Earth, now rests firmly on human action, human responsibility, and human subjectivity. It represents, without a doubt, the greatest expansion of human agency in their theological history.
So what is the big takeaway from all this? Why does it matter? Well, despite their very different cosmological frames and methods, Donghak with its immediate revolution and Daesun with its gradual harmonization, both of these streams successfully forged a uniquely Eastern, homegrown path to modernity. They completely reconstructed human subjectivity, and they didn't wait around for Western influence to do it. These aren't simply religious concepts. They provided a vital, brand new philosophical foundation that actively shaped the way modern Korean society thinks about equality, human rights, and our relationship with the cosmos.
Which leaves us with a pretty fascinating question to consider. In a world that so often assumes a one-size-fits-all Western model for progress, how might these autonomous, Eastern frameworks of human divine subjectivity inform our global pursuit of equality today? Whether it's through recognizing the absolute divine value in every single individual, or pursuing gradual harmony to resolve deep societal grudges, these historical ideas feel incredibly relevant right now. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep questioning the origins of the ideas that shape our world.